So what do we got?
Well,
Okay.
Richard, I think we should start.
I think we should start.
Absolutely.
As usual, folks, we have a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. Here are the top 9 that Richard has picked for this week. For our top news story, the question, can we move in a positive long-term direction, avoiding long-term disaster? Here are some milestones to a post-scarcity civilization. For our coronavirus story, now that we have Zoom University, here's a question. Is college worth the enormous cost without the in-person experience? And for our technology story, another question. If 50 million artificial neurons are used to facilitate machine learning research, what might that lead to? In materials, now that we can print organic transistors at low cost, will you wear one? For our flight space story, space is so big, and a very large telescope has spotted galaxies trapped, a bunch of galaxies trapped in the web of a supermassive black hole. For our environment energy story, here are some positive developments in dealing with the climate crisis, and we'll list some of them. In biology, synthetic biology is an amazing new tool. One thing they do is to change organisms into biofactories. For our human story, why do some friends make you feel more supported than others? Apparently, it's because they know and like each other. And for our health medical story, maybe we'll get, after so many years of trying, universal flu vaccine. Might they be able to do this for COVID-19 as well? Anyway, Richard, what's this about being able to avoid long-term disaster with milestones to a post-scarcity civilization?
Well, I thought it would be good to start with a story like this because often, we hear such negative things. And I think from these talks that, I think a lot of progress is happening. And so this article kind of talks about it. And this guy really started thinking about this after reading, some of these doom and gloom editorials. And with the COVID epidemic, when it's over, what we are going to have to do is rebuild society. And when we rebuild the society, we need to be pushing in the right directions. And so this guy wrote blue sky ideas of what can happen in this time. And he's saying that we will have a post-scarcity possibility. And that post-scarcity possibility, the thing that will happen is, all of our lives and in the lives of our parents and our grandparents, and the population of the world has exploded. And this explosion has created scarcity among some and depleted the environment and caused many more tragedies. And it's not going to continue. The population, even without global warming, the population is going to stop increasing. And they don't know when it is. But when that happens, then things start to become possible that are not possible now. And he starts to list some of those. One of them is you have a sustainable global population that is sustainable. You have the number of people is the number of people that the Earth can support. They also say a sustainable global production. That is, your production processes are balanced and don't take any more out of the Earth than they put back in, for example. This includes then a carbon I have trouble sometimes with that word, carbon sequestration and drawdown of atmospheric CO2. That's something that is being worked on with intensity now. And when that happens, then there is the chance for a global ecological restoration. And pieces of that are actually going on now. There are places in England, for example, where they are restoring ancient forests. Then an end to worldwide poverty. We could end poverty today if we wanted to. There's enough food for everyone, and you could argue that the food poverty and hunger is a distribution problem. It's not a production problem. We have enough stuff. Universal basic income is on this list also, as well as access to education at all levels. Another element that is not trivial is an automation of routine production of everything. You know, why should it be? You know, we're good at doing a lot of that now, and that's going to become a lot more possible with, for example, the advances in 3D printing, where you're able to build manufacturing processes where you don't need to be supported with parts you get somewhere else. You just print whatever you need and make it into whatever you need. The another thing they have that some might think is a bit idealistic, but that's the development of electronic democracy. You know, if we're all here and we're all online, you know, there has to be some way we can use that to cooperate with each other in terms of dealing with our government and our institution. Now, though this list might seem kind of blue sky to you, at the end of it, he has some things that are even more blue sky, which is maybe then we just move manufacturing off planet. You know, no need to clutter up our environment with that kind of stuff. And when we have manufacturing off planet, you know, we will probably be mining asteroids and things like that for all the materials. So what a nice little system. And then in the area of biology, there is, of course, life extension. We're working madly on that now. There also are these brain-computer interfaces. Another name for them is neural laces that interface your brain and the computer directly. So you're really online real time. And also, how about external wombs? You know, pregnancy, I have heard from miscellaneous women and wives is has parts of it that are at least a nuisance and uncomfortable. Why put the people we love through that? You know, we can just have it done in the rental room, and we can still have a party when the baby is born and everything. So this is a list of that might seem like science fiction, but these are all things that are genuinely possible as we start to rebuild our lives from COVID, and particularly as the population growth levels off. That is, according to some forecasts, expected to happen in about 30 years.
So, any comments?
I don't think it'll happen. People haven't changed in all this time. Somebody always wants to get a leg up on somebody else. They spend more money inventing bigger clubs to hit people with than they do on everything put together.
Okay, anyone else? Comments?
I think that this virus, this time we're going through now, is teaching us a lot of things, also about the importance of working together, of getting along. So things might look different once we get out of the pandemic.
Any other comments?
Well, I would say that it's certainly before anything of this can happen, attitudes need to be changed among people. You know, and religions should be re-examined, I think, and things that, you know, people believing in things that are in the sky. I mean, there's no place in any of this. So that's just something that comes to mind.
Any other thoughts? Then I guess we'll move on to our coronavirus story. How about Zoom University? Is college worth the cost without the in-person experience?
Now, though this is the time when I do coronavirus stories, I put this story here because I feel like part of the issue with the coronavirus is that it is changing lives, and some of those changes will not go back after the pandemic is over. One of them turns out to be, what are the advantages of going to college? The colleges all spend big money on promoting. When you apply to a college, you get this fancy, beautiful looking brochure, and they're all trying to convince you to go to their college, that you will have the best 4 years of your life at their college and make friends that you will have and be able to use for the rest of your life, and all of these things. So it's a beautiful promise, and the promise, it turns out, comes with a price tag. The average cost now for a public university in the US is about $20,000 a year in fees, you know, room and board and books are extra. For a private institution, it's a little more than twice that, at about $42,000 a year. So it's expensive. They still say, the studies say, though, it's worth it. And the average college graduate makes $30,000 a year in his lifetime, more than the high school graduate. So they're saying it's worth it. But the question is, how much is the experience of going out and drinking beer with your friends worth? Yeah.
Any comment?
Yes.
I think by going to online teaching, you also have the ability to bring the best teachers, the best ways of teaching instead of some universities might be better than others. So being able to bring that expertise online for teaching, I think that's worth a lot.
So, I mean, you just go to the best teachers in the world for all of your subjects? That's a great idea unless you're one of the other teachers.
Any other thoughts?
Well, on the one hand, can I, you want to go, Mary Ellen?
Go.
Okay. On the one hand, it would certainly be a lot more affordable for people if they could just stay in their home and go to university and get an education. Of course, the universities was not like this because they make a lot of money. On the other hand, there's a sense of camaraderie, and I don't know how to put a value on that.
Right.
In the
That's,
university.
I think, the question. You know, and part of going to the university is also for many people their first time out on their own, out from under their parents,
Yeah.
and the university is a protected place to do that. Now, the other thing I realized, there was a long time ago when colleges were crowded in California, and I wanted to get enrolled in the college, so I stood in line overnight just to turn my application in. So it was a different era. And that night, about 4 o'clock in the morning, I came to another realization about college, which is the purpose of college really is to keep people off of the job market.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I hope the colleges learn, because they're all struggling right now, and there's so many things I get so annoyed at. The idea that these students are spending $300 a semester on these stupid books that are like updated every 4 years. Come on, you know, any kind of a history book, yeah, you add the latest, but the idea that they're spending so much money doing that. And I guess I'm also very thoughtful because I am having my 50th anniversary from my college, and I can see they're struggling. And I'm like, maybe they need to do mostly remote and then get the students in for a year or so when they're more mature and they can make friends and stuff like that. I don't know. I think colleges have to shape up. And I really, like you said, the idea that they could have, you know, guest speakers from all over the world get on for an hour and do a lecture, for crying out loud. And I hope they learn from it, because I think there's a lot that needs to change. You know, again, the idea of these kids, well, I do remember partying. but now,
I think your suggestion.
now it seems a little bit.
Mary Ellen, I think you're.
The whole object.
My wife says that she majored in beer.
Mary Ellen, I think your suggestion of 1 year of in-person university is a great combination.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that. Why have one or the other?
The whole object of going to college is to make more money, and the colleges have the same idea. They want to make money off their service.
They're a business.
Of course, and I think if somehow or another that could be changed, that the profit motive is no longer applicable, then I think we might see some real change.
Hope so. Hey, how about all the building they're still doing? They're still building buildings with all the empty things, and they're still building. I'm like, I go crazy when I hear this stuff, you know?
If students are no longer paying a lot of money, how will universities fund research?
Why would universities have to fund research? Why can't government do that? I mean, the research is ultimately of importance to the population. So I think research should come out of tax dollars.
Say it again. Say that again, please.
I said research should come out of tax dollars.
Taxes.
Yeah. And I think a lot of research are grants, and I think there's a lot of colleges that don't do a lot of research. And they, you know, but again, the research could almost be another part of, maybe that'll bring in money or something. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think I hope they learn.
I think here we have to remember that the U.S. has very expensive education. Other countries seem to manage with much less in fees, as well as even free university. So you say, how do they do it? And why can't the US do it?
There's another reason, and that is there's a lot of talented people who will never find the money to go to the university. That talent is going to waste. If we can harvest all that talent, and not a question of money.
Now, in terms of these sessions, by the way, when you talk about research, one of the major sources for the science news that I talk about is this college research that you're talking about. And the college research is able to function in ways than areas that big business, for example, won't support, because they can't see where the profit is. And some of that research is actually the most interesting and the most groundbreaking. So it's an interesting question. And I'm glad you brought that side of it up, Fred, because I really hadn't thought about it until this discussion, that other side of the college institution as a place of real advancement of human knowledge.
Richard, don't you think we're looking at it in a one-sided way? We're swallowing the U.S. attitude of profit, profit, profit for everything, and it's important. But is it? Does it have to be for profit? Right.
Yes.
And we haven't even started to discuss sports. The money that surrounds the sports.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, folks, let's move on to our technology story. Apparently, 50 million artificial neurons are being used now to facilitate machine learning research. What could that lead to? Richard.
Now, this is, I think, an interesting story from several different points of view, one of which is that one thing that I reported when I first started to do science sessions was forecasts for computers. The computer scientists talk about a singularity that's going to happen sometime in our future. And what they mean by a singularity is the time when you have a computer as smart as a human being. And this particular article that I was reading a couple of years ago was saying that they thought in 10 or 20 years, then for $1,000, we'd be able to buy a box like a PC that would have the smarts of a human being in it. And then maybe in another 10 years, we'd be able for $1,000 to buy a box that had the intelligence of every human being on the planet in it. And so this is kind of a story that I've been following for a while. And this is actually a new step in this. While they've tried to make computers as smart as people using traditional von Neumann architecture, which is binary based on yes-no processes, it looks like the computers would really have to be big to do it. And we don't actually know if they can do it. there's another way, and this is what they called neuromorphic computers, and they're trying to essentially make artificial neurons out of silicon that work the way that human brain neurons do, which are not just yes, no, but the way these work is you get a bunch of them together and they're all kind of pointing one way, and when they reach some critical threshold, then it sends a blip off signaling to the next thing that something's happening. And it turns out this way of dealing with problems by approximation rather than yes-no certainty is, they think, will be a lot easier when they figure out how to do it. We don't know how to use this kind of computer well yet because all our algorithms, all our ideas are based on the yes-no architecture, but they think this process will, this approach will end up being much more power efficient and energy efficient than our present approach. You know, the human brain, I think, uses about 10 watts of power. That's less than half of the power that your laptop uses. And the human brain using that little power, it seems pretty good to me, you know, pretty real time and broad, lots of bandwidth. And they think that this kind of computing is going to be the way they figure out how to do it. This is a research agreement between Intel and Scandia National Labs. It's a 3-year agreement. This is the first step. By the time they're through, they will have a neural computer. Instead of 50 million neurons, it will have more than 1 billion neurons. So 3 years from now, it will be 20 times as big as it is. And they don't know what they will find. And that is exciting to all of us, and probably will be the source of trouble also.
Any thoughts?
I think that the being able to develop better science, better machines, it sounds very good. But we have a lot of science now and people don't listen. So it would be nice if common sense can sort of advance at the same speed.
Oh, now talk about the idealist.
Very good.
Yes.
Other thoughts?
Okay.
Okay, our material story. Now that we can print organic transistors at low cost, will you wear one? Richard, what's that about?
Now, this is actually about display technology at one end. Right now, the way that displays are made, like on your phone or your smart TV, are using thin film transistors. And they're able to operate with enough efficiency and small enough to get the kind of resolution that we need to have the pictures that we like in the screen. There is a new future coming here, though, and this is organic thin film transistors made out of organic materials. And these will be lower cost, lightweight, be able to be big area and wearable, flexible. And that further, you don't need the fancy semiconductor, the $1 billion semiconductor factory to be able to make them. you can actually print these transistors onto the surface that you're going to make your screen. Printing technology is inexpensive, and they the design team dreams of seeing a conversion between the real world and the virtual world in ways that we've never seen before, because these things will be so inexpensive that you can build your walls in your house from them, or the wall on the street from them. To do it, they of course had to do some fairly amazing material tricks, because they're made on a substrate that normally won't let you put stuff on it. It repels any kind of fluid, and they had to figure out some trick to make the stuff stick to a substrate that won't have things stick to it. So again, they had to solve some problems before they could do it, but this really changes the world of displays. And also, like they talked about, there's no reason why then you couldn't, in your clothing, print a computer, for example, a cell phone or something like that, a temperature sensor, medical device sensor, right into your clothing. So who knows?
Any thoughts? Well, I
Was
guess that's
it on
Go
here
ahead.
that we, can I
What's
talk?
that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, was it on here that we were talking about, I had seen a mask and there was like an LED going across it, and you could, whatever you wanted to say, you just had to type into your phone.
Now, we didn't talk about it here. We probably would have if I'd have heard about it.
Well, I'll see if I could find it. It looked pretty good. Can you imagine? For the next 3 weeks. Oh my God. Sort of like, shut up. Sort of like, or turning around to say to somebody else and saying, don't listen to him. You know, he doesn't know it. Anyway, okay.
Any other thoughts?
How would you like to live in a world where, again, you could just have your walls of your house be wherever you wanted to, and you could transport yourself to a beachfront or a mountaintop? Or how about this? Have yourself in a movie, but the movie is kind of three-dimensional on the walls of all your house, and you're immersed in the middle of it.
Hey.
Sounds scary to me.
Well,
Good imagination there, Rich.
Well, we're going to do it. Some of it is all this sci-fi I've read, and one of the things I read a long time ago that perhaps is frightening was you're walking down the street, the computers identify who you are, and once they know who you are, they of course know more about you than you know about yourself, and then using lasers, they project in front of you a hologram that is designed to get you to come into their store.
I think Facebook has that already.
That's right. Well, Facebook is one of the leading investors in the brain control computer interface. Turns out to be Facebook, because they want me to put on a cap so they can connect Facebook with my brain, and they say that's a two-way connection. So not only can they read what I'm thinking, but they can write to the brain and implant thoughts like what I need to buy now. That's right, Art.
Like Amazon Prime Day.
That's right. This is the day, right?
Now, if you think that's scary, our next story about a big space we have, we've now spotted galaxies, huge things trapped in the web of a supermassive black hole. I don't want to be there. Richard.
Now, where am I going? I'm going the wrong way. Okay, here we are. Like it says here, some of you know that one thing I like about space is that it's big. And it actually is one of the real important physics tools that we have now, because in space we are able to see masses and energies that we don't see anywhere on this planet or even in this solar system. And so one of these is these very big telescopes they have, and this is ESO's Very Large Telescope is at the heart of this, and it has more power than any of the telescopes before it. And their astronomers have found 6 galaxies that are orbiting around a supermassive black hole. This is a black hole with roughly a billion times the mass of our sun. So that's fairly big, and it turns out to be big enough to attract the nearby galaxies and have them circle around it. But it actually turns out, even though that is a fairly amazing story to me anyway, that there's actually another story that maybe is more interesting underneath it. You see, these galaxies were very old. They were when the universe was not yet a billion years old. Now it's what, 16 billion years old or something. So the universe was still just a baby. And they think black holes began when the first stars went nova and collapsed. And then they wondered how these supermassive black holes could exist, because they've known for a while that they were in this very young galaxy. These supermassive black holes are like, for example, the one at the center of our local galaxy that we live in, that is also this enormous thing sucking in everything around it. Fortunately, we're on the edge of the galaxy, so it'll be a while before it gets to us. Anyway, they've wondered how these black holes could form, and what they were able to see with the telescope is that around this ancient black hole, there was like a web of gases going out that was more than the size of about 300 times bigger than our galaxy. So it's a fairly big network. And in this web, where these webs of gases cross, there were galaxies that were there. And so they now know that if black holes have this web of gases around it, it can suck enough stuff in to get that big. They didn't know that until they had this picture. And even this raises a question, because, why would there be webs of gases instead of just gases evenly distributed through this early universe? And they think the reason for this web of gases is, we can only see about 10% of the universe. All this other stuff is things that we know that are there because of gravity, but we can't find. They call it dark energy and dark matter. And they think these webs that made the supermassive black holes possible are more evidence for the dark matter, and the dark matter somehow pulled the gases into this web and made the universe happen. So good for it.
Any thoughts?
And I know some of these subjects, like deep in technology or astronomy or physics, are not common table conversation topics. So
I think when,
Go ahead.
I think when we look into deep space, we are limited by the fact that the time it takes for light or radiation to come back to us, what's actually happening out there is totally different if we're talking about many light years.
right,
We have a picture, but it's not real anymore.
right. That fussy Einstein limit.
Which is how many light years?
Well, again, that one, they said it was 0.9 billion years old. So if the universe is 16 billion years old, then that was a 15 billion year old signal that we received. So it's kind of old.
It's like watching an old movie.
Well, it's the only movie we got, though.
So who comes up with this kind of information? How do they?
Astronomers that spend their life, and physicists who spend their life trying to figure out how to explain the stuff that they can see. Because these telescopes created a lot of problems for these kind of guys, because it gave them, they observed stuff that they could not understand. And the job of the physicists then was to develop some system that explains what you see. And they're still working on it.
At the beginning of our session today, for our top news story, the question was, can we move in a positive long-term direction with some milestones for a good civilization? And now, in our environment one, there are some positive developments in dealing with climate change. Richard, can you tell us about them?
I would love to. Part of the reason why I like this story is, if you've listened to me these years, that I am not as negative about what's going on as some people. And the reason I'm not as negative is because I see each week many, many details of work that is done that are going to change things, and that this kind of change through technology, through new inventions and new discoveries happens much faster than we're used to. And so we've got ourselves in a terrible mess, but we're having things that, while they may not get us out of the mess, they may help us have a soft landing. So the mainstream media, by the way, mainly reports on dramatic things, and most of these are negative. And so this is that's what you hear, except one of the things that has happened in the last few years is there has been a big increase in the number of researchers around the world. A lot of that is funded by governments around the world, and these researchers have sped up this process, so the discoveries are happening faster. And of course, this week's discoveries make possible discoveries next week that we haven't even imagined. And so I'm going to spend a little time covering some of these areas that are due to technical developments that are changing things. First, take solar energy. Right now, we have improved already solar technology fast enough where it is cheaper than analysts could imagine 10 years ago. And that has happened now. And our solar power, our stuff is more efficient, more powerful, and longer lasting than it ever was. And that we're just beginning. There are improvements that I hear about that will at least double efficiency, et cetera. So there's more big changes that are continuing to happen there. Now, we don't have any of these here, but these solar cells can be transparent. So like the windows on your houses or your skyscrapers or your greenhouses can all produce power besides letting light in. And they even have solar cells that harvest low levels of ambient light like in your house. And they can harvest enough energy there to run your computer, say, without plugging it into the wall. There are floating solar cells, and that's an area of where there is much potential because there's a lot of calm water around the world that you could have solar cells on. And then there are advanced rooftop solar power cells now that can generate power overnight and can generate power even when it's dark by converting the heat energy that your roof has absorbed into electricity. So you can have solar panels that give you power 24 hours a day. There is also another area, wind energy. The wind, today's models are roughly 100 times more powerful, can generate 100 times more power than the models from 1970. Our means of storing energy have changed and improved. There are things, chemical flow batteries for big systems. There's another energy system that uses stored potential energy that when you have power, one of them lifts concrete bricks up, and then when you don't have power, it lets them down and generates energy. And then there also, which is not given much credit to people, still the developments in safer, more sustainable forms of the dreaded nuclear power. And if you don't like that, we are really a few years away now from the first functioning fusion reactor. And when we have fusion reactors, power suddenly becomes enormously cheaper and more available. And if you look at it now, every aspect of how we currently conduct our lives in this post-industrial West is being examined for energy savings and carbon light alternatives. And we're creating new ways of manufacturing plastic, for example, that are renewable and biodegradable. We have new ways of refining metals, like using super concave mirrors that concentrate sunlight. And thanks to new advances in biotechnology and engineered yeast strains and algae colonies, we can produce many things like more sustainable cases for your phone and flip-flops the world's most popular shoe made from algae that's recyclable, and recyclable clothing. You know, there are millions of tons of plastic clothes in these garbage dumps. And this is just a small sample of the things that we have going. So don't give up hope, I would say.
Any thoughts?
We already have like a little stick with a solar cell. You put in a place with sunshine, and I bought a few of those for $1 each at the dollar store. And at night, it illuminates the path into our house.
Right. Yes.
It's available.
Any comments? Okay, then.
And I
Moving
know
on.
this stuff sounds like science fiction to you, but you have to understand there is part of this that if we're going to be able to do anything to save the planet, it really comes from the kind of technologies that we're talking about, using biological alternatives instead of polluting alternatives, and figuring out how to break our terrible addiction on fossil fuels. And those things are all made possible by this kind of work.
Yeah, it sort of verifies what I thought. I've thought for a while that you really can't, people say, everything's going to hell in a handbasket. And I say, well, you don't know what will happen.
Right.
Things change, and some things give impetus to something else. Like a certain political situation could lead to extreme change because there's so much opposition to it. Things like that. You do not know what hasn't yet been discovered. I rest my case.
Now, Richard a minute ago said that biology is one of the things that's amazing. But now he's talking about synthetic biology. What is that? And how does it mean that you can change the stuff of life into factories?
Well, I think synthetic biology will be at the root of this century's greatest technological advancements, which I think are going to come from biology and not electronics, like happened in the last century with the semiconductor devices. And this story is an example of it. And plants already produce a wide range of molecules, some of which they use to communicate with other plants and to kill pests and things that bother them. And biologists have already harnessed this ability of plants to make molecules. And one of the things they're making now for human health is that's how we make aspirin. Basically grow aspirin from plants. But the scientists at the Joint Bioenergy Institute are now using synthetic biology to give the plants ability to create molecules that have never been seen before in nature. And one thing they're doing is, for example, these different molecules are made by enzymes in plants, and the enzymes are made by their biology, and they're taking structures from one plant that makes an enzyme and putting it into another plant, and so that another plant can make things that are new. And their long-term goal is to engineer plants to be biofactories of all molecules like these. They're able to now in many other ways. For example, therapeutic molecules that now are made in the lab. If you can grow aspirin from a plant, why can't you grow your therapeutic drugs from the plants? And they want to push the boundaries of plant metabolism to make compounds that we've never seen before.
Any thoughts? No, I wonder if somebody was concerned about GMOs, would this make them turn over in their grave?
Could be. Some people will turn over on their grave no matter what we say.
Yeah.
Any thoughts? Okay, moving on to things about us. And your question is, why do some friends make you feel more supported than others do? And apparently it's because they know and like each other. What's that about?
I think that's an interesting story, and this is a story that is based on research, and I can't imagine any company that would pay for this research. So here I'm glad the universities have the ability to do this kind of work. And basically, they did a study, as scientists are wont to do, and came to this conclusion. And let me describe one element of the study. They had many people who were asked to list 8 people in their lives that they could go to for support, and then rate them on a 1 to 7 scale in terms of how much support they received from each person. Then they took the further step of asking them to rate on a scale 1 to 7 how close each of the possible pairs that they identified were to each other. And then they took all of that and crunched the numbers and calculated what they call the density of each person's network. And what they found is that the closer and more interconnected the friends were to each other, here they said the denser the network, then the more people reported that they were able to turn to those people in times of need. And so what we found that our support networks are actually what they say more than just the sum of their parts, because our support network actually depends heavily on our friends' ability to support each other. And when we're in this network of supporting people, we do better and are happier. So it also says, by the way, one part of that says that for you, when you have a crisis in your life and you have to turn to people for support, you would get better support if among the people you turn to, they are connected to each other.
Any thoughts?
I was thinking, in a way, the Chapala society has some of that. A lot of people know each other, and so it seems that would be an example. I don't know if you agree with that.
I think also in Ahiic. Ahiic is a destination for people like us, and so the people we know are people like us, and that makes it easy to make friends, and because of that, we are in a more connected environment. Now, Fred and I and John all go to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship here, and when I read this article, it made me think of the fellowship, that one of the big elements in it, I have always believed was this supportive environment of friends that you end up being in. And it turns out it's even better than I thought, because these are people who like each other.
Yep.
Just recently, one of the members who's having major health problems, other members who are close to her send out appeals to the rest of the congregation saying, can anybody help us deal with this, with this and this and this? So the friends are going to other friends to help support the person.
Yes.
I remember being at an open house or open circle and meeting this guy who was there and said that his wife had died at 4 o'clock, and people are wondering, what is he doing there? He says, but I didn't know what to do or where to go.
Oh.
But he knew to come down to open circle where a lot of LCS people are members.
And what a wonderful thing for him that something like that was available.
Yeah.
You know, it reminded me, I belong to a social group, and I joined it like 35 years ago, and we're all like in our 30s, and it's called A Group of Friends. And we've been friends, and it was never really a dating group. The whole idea was each person had to plan activities and sponsor them, and would have parties, would have this, and this. And now we're all getting older and having the hip replacements or the this or the this. And we have found that you just put it out saying, hey, you know, somebody needs to get to physical therapy. Here are the dates. Can anyone jump in? And it happened to me. And within like 20 minutes, I had 15 rides already set up. So I totally agree with that. I think, and I'm going to share that article with this group.
Oh,
because I
good.
thought it was very, very powerful. So.
Okay, then on to our last story. What's this about getting a universal flu vaccine?
Hold on.
Let's wait for John here. For many years, the medical.
Oh, yes, I got an appointment at 15 o'clock. Okay, I'll be there at 10 o'clock. Bye-bye.
Anyway, for many years, medical scientists have been trying to figure out just one flu vaccine instead of a new vaccine every year. And MIT scientists look like they've made some headway there. And the problem with flu vaccines have been, it turns out vaccines have parts, which I didn't know about until this article. And one of the parts of the vaccine is what they call the stem. And the stem is the thing that they can get the best access to in terms of immune response. But the stem also is the part that mutates rapidly. Or excuse me, it's not the stem, it's the head. Okay, the head, which mutates rapidly. And the reason you need a new vaccine every year is the head changes fast and you're attacking the head. So you need a vaccine that attacks this head. The head connects to what they call the stem, which does not change as fast as the head does, but it's been real difficult to develop vaccines that go after this part of the virus. And so what they did is they developed a virus that was made out of different vaccines. They made a vaccine that was made out of several different vaccines that were reacted to different of the stems, and they combined them all in one vaccine, and they had the kind of hope or intuition that maybe this would cause some immune response to the stem instead of the head. And it turns out they were right. And here they've tested it on mice, and on mice with a similar immune system that we do, they're able to give them a vaccine that protects them against all kinds of flus, not just some kinds of flus. So they think that they're on the way to developing a universal flu vaccine instead of the one where you need the new shot each year, and sometimes this year's shot doesn't work against this year's strain.
Yeah, very interesting. Any comments?
I hope they speed it up a little bit.
Now, what I wondered when they were doing this, I wondered, hey, what about coronavirus?
Yeah.
And it turns out, I think next week, one of the stories that I have lined up is that some guys are making real progress with a universal coronavirus vaccine. And when you get that vaccine, there's a kind of cold that you won't get anymore.
Good.
Any other thoughts? Well then, if not, oh, Margot? No, okay. Thanks very much, folks. Thank you, Richard, for this, and we'll see you all in a week's time. Bye for now.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Richard.
joining.
Thank you, Fred.
Now I'll have to recover from information overload.
Okay, I know. I understand the problem, John. Sometimes when I am reading the articles to talk to you, it makes me so tired I have to go take a nap.
In fact, I think that's what I'm going to do right now.
Okay.
Thanks, Richard. It was very interesting. It
And
was nice
Richard,
meeting you.
Richard, you might get a few messages from me. I sort of lost you here.
Oh,
My computer ran out of juice.
I saw
and
you
so I was like,
coming in, and I saw you coming in and out.
okay, all right. So thank you.
I had to notice and admit you each time.
Oh, okay. Yes, yes. Then I was on twice. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good week. Good
You too.
articles.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Bye.
You too. Okay, bye-bye.
See you, John.